Cloud.
Voice. Woo! Hare Krishna.
Om Gyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Gauraprastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Vanaiti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Radhikaye Priyamane Shishimad Bhaktivedanta Narayaneti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Panchakalpa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nityananda Namastubhyam Premananda Pradayine Kalo Kamashana Shaya Janava Pataye Namaha Namo Mahavananyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gora Tushe Namaha Om Vrindai Tulasi Devya Priyai Keshavasya Cha Krishna Bhakti Pradadevi Satyavakya Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Bolo Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Sorry, I'm just trying to. Someone has their mic on. Can you unmute them, Yashoda? Can you mute them, Yashoda?
Oh, I love doing that. Where are they? Come on, I'm gonna get them. Sure. Yes. No, it's, who is it? All right. I'm on maneuvers. Don't worry.
Okay.
Yes, Yashvini. It's probably Yashvini. It usually is.
It wasn't. I didn't want to name and shame. Or actually,
Yash.
it wasn't actually Yashashvini. This time she didn't make any mistakes.
Always happy when I see you, Shash.
Okay. Harry Ball, thank you everyone for coming. We've all been excited for part 2. I know a lot of people have told me they're looking forward to hearing more. I know I've been excited. I've been so excited, actually. I was telling Yashoda and Prabhu, I woke up this morning and I realized I'd had this dream that I was at Yashoda's wedding. He was getting married to, he was getting married. And I didn't tell him this other part was that instead of like some kind of best man speech, it was just like on Holistic Bhakti, everyone was just saying like a little bit, like, and for some reason I was there with my family, and I was like, how do I say the things I want to say without like sounding like an absolute crazy person in front of my family? I don't know what they were doing there, but clearly somehow they managed to sneak on the invite list. But anyway, enough about.
Jerome, can you make it clear that I was marrying a woman, right?
I can neither confirm nor deny the gender of the.
Oh, come on! You told me earlier it was. You told me what she looked. Yeah, Carol. I don't want to interrupt you.
Is he doing a plug for you? Have you got your eye on someone in the audience?
I think it's the opposite, Bradar. I think he's shaming me.
Okay.
Okay. Well, we'll move on from my often surreal dreams. Anyway, as I was saying, we're very grateful to be back here again, speaking about marriage and relationships. we've decided we're going for a different format tonight. Shodananda Prabhu is going to do a relatively brief intro, I think 10 to 15 minutes. And then we're going to spend the vast majority of the session, maybe an hour, maybe slightly less, depending on how long the panelists speak, on just focusing on 2 questions that we've selected. And then if there's time at the end, we'll try and answer some more of the questions that have been submitted or that get submitted throughout the course of the session. So when you're ready, Yashoda, you can take it away.
Thanks, Tarun. Thank you for embarrassing me yet again. Vanchakalpa Turbischa, Kripa Sindhu Evacha, Patitanam Pavenabhyo, Vaishnavabhyo, Namanamaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shid Veda Gadata Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Dandavats to my humble obeisances to my Srila Gurudev, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayana Goswami Maharaj, my humble obeisances to Srila Prabhupada, whose appearance day it was yesterday, and to Parampara, to all the assembled devotees, to all the devotees who will watch this on the recording, and to Gaunitai and Shri Shri Radha and Krishna. So the purpose of my intro here is not to be like the speaker with all the content as in normal weeks. It's really just to sort of, you could say like an amuse-bouche, or perhaps like just getting ourselves back into the subject matter, a bit of a refresher, maybe a couple of add-ons I've got to say on the subject before we go into the main part of the discussion, which I'll hand back to Tarun, who will MC it with the panel, who will answer the questions in more depth. And the great thing about today is the panelists will have more time to answer the questions. It won't be like 1 or 2 minutes. It's more like at least say 5 minutes per question, which will be great. This is such a marriage, relationships, and intimacy is such an essential question to try and navigate this very difficult issue. How to blend, integrate, dovetail bhakti with our life partner. And I don't know what the statistics are, but looking around, with a few exceptions, thank you, Vishamba, you and Gauravani are exemplary, although she'd hate, you'd probably like it, but she'd hate me saying you're exemplary grihastras, but you know, comparatively speaking, but there are really, there's really a wreckage of a lot of unfortunate and unhappy marriages and breakups, which is prevalent in our Kali Yuga society, but it does seem like devotees seem to outpace the mainstream society in divorce rates, from what I can tell, although I haven't got any firm evidence of that. It's more anecdotal. But I do feel in my bones that over time, because as the second and third generation kick in and things settle down in Vaishnavism across the world, I think we will become a lot better at being married and at relationships. I think integration will take place because the focus of Srila Prabhupada, understandably, was to get the temple set up and get the Siddhanta and get the Tattva and Ras all in place and all the core practices in place. And it was a temple-based and sannyas and brahmachari-focused organization to begin with, but that is now changing, and it's becoming much more grihastra-based, as per the vision of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And these two aspects, which is part of Varnashram Dharma, to have the temple side, the sannyas and brahmachari side, cooperating the grihastra side, because there's a beautiful exchange that goes on there, where one is offering material resource and the other is offering the siddhanta. Although of course that doesn't preclude brahmacharis also and sannyasis fundraising, and also grihastras also speaking Harikatha. But there's a beautiful marriage there to be had, and I think I do have an optimistic feeling about that it's going to change over the next 20 years in a very positive way. Last week was a beautiful intro, a beautiful exposition by Vishamba and Gauravani about marriage, relationships, intimacy. And what I liked most about it was how naturally they both spoke, because I think, and it wasn't caught up in a lot of, it was bound by theory. You know, they both understand the parameters and the pathway of bhakti. There's a real naturalness about their sharing of their experience, and as well as it being natural, it was also very, I felt very honest and also very approachable. Like it felt like everybody could partake in what it was that they're experiencing. So I had a little bash at creating what I call the marriage model, which is just a little work in progress to sort of summarize and maybe add a couple of my own thoughts as to the five elements that make a marriage really function. So Tarun, can you enable me to share? And I'll just take the audience through this model as just one way of looking at marriage. I need to do share sound, share. Here we go. Okay. Can I expand that? Can everybody see? Oh, slideshow. Yes, great. Tarun, can you see that okay?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So part of this will be is it blinking at you? Because it's blinking at me.
It blinked once. Oh yeah,
It's
no.
blinking a lot over here.
Is that disturbing everybody? It's not, it's okay. I don't know why it's blinking. Actually, maybe if I just expand it. How's that? Is that clear to everybody?
Yeah, stop blinking as well.
Yeah, okay, great.
Yes.
All right, so basically, this is a very simple marriage model, most of which I feel that Vish and Gauravani really touched on 3 weeks ago, where Shri Guru is in the middle. So we're trying, of course, we're trying as much as possible to please Shri Guru as much as possible. Most of the time, if we're in Grihastha Ashram and we're not in Vanaprast, we're not at that point of Anyablasta, Sunyam, Gyan, Kamadhyana Vritam, and Kalenia Krishna Shilnam Bhakti Uttama. So most of our activities are tinged with some selfish desires for karma, for gyan, for moksha, for mystic cities. All this stuff comes in to the equation, but we're trying to put Gurudev in the center and think about what pleases him. And even though we're not doing it in a pure way, we're in the river. We're in the river that's flowing out to the ocean of praying. So these four elements I felt were intrinsic to a good marriage. One is to have goals. So that can be both spiritual goals and material goals that are explicit. Because when you have goals, which is like if you think of a football match, a goal is very defined. It's between two posts, it's behind a line, it's inside a time period. Anything outside of those time and space parameters is not a goal. So a goal is very clear. So sometimes people come up with goals, but they're not goals. Like, so for example, if somebody says, I'm going to go to university in 2 years' time, that's not actually a goal, because 2 years could be 2 years for the rest of your life. It's not set at a particular date and time. So having material and spiritual goals that are explicit, I think is very powerful in a marriage, because not only does it keep both parties highly engaged in their lives, but it gives both parties an understanding of what the other party actually wants to achieve in their life. Because sometimes it can be quite separate to the marriage. Like, for example, studying a course could actually have nothing to do necessarily with bringing up the kids. It could be something that's outside of the marriage domain, but it's something that person really wants to do. So it allows you to understand what the other person wants to do, and it allows you to support them. So having explicit goals is very powerful, because then you can help each other achieve those goals. Communication, absolutely. One of the things that Vishwambara and Gauravani talked about was having a date night each week. And I think Badar and Lalita are doing the same. In fact, I think it was originally Badar's idea to Vish, and now he's doing it himself, right? So setting aside time for good communication. So there's the element of setting aside time for quality communication, as opposed to speaking in the corridor, in and out the kitchen, when the kids are screaming on the way to school. No, but setting aside some sacred space for good communication, and also investing time in style of communication, really listening to one another, understanding what it is to listen without your ego getting involved in the process. So you can really, because half the time, I mean, one thing I learned it a bit late, I have to say, in my marriage was a lot of the time when particularly a woman is complaining about something, my experience is they don't want it fixed. They just want to be understood. And guys, we just want to be two things. We want to be heroes, so we want to solve the problem. And quite frankly, we just want the problem to go away because it's kind of painful listening to it. So we want to solve the problem. So most of the time we jump in trying to solve a problem that actually doesn't need solving. It just needs listening to. The other party just wants to know they're being understood and heard. So understanding communication, what the other person needs, style of communication, this is very important to invest in. And we also touched on intimacy and sex and this kind of like so-called rule that you can't have sex unless it's for procreation. Well, actually, that's not strictly true because it's an evolution of consciousness. So we touched upon the fact that, you know, at minimum, we should try to just, you know, partake in that activity and sexual activity with one person and have a life partner. That's very important. But within the sanctity of that marriage, it's unrealistic to hope that you're just going to be having intimacy for procreation straight off, because most of the time as devotees, we're not developed enough. We don't have enough attraction for Krishna yet to give that up. That's the goal. We don't want to change the goal, but there's a process of evolution whereby we remember that we're not a pathway of renunciation. We're not into renouncing things for its own sake. We're renouncing things because we want the attraction for Sri Krishna. We want the attraction, we want to serve, we want to be Radhadasyas. But along the way, if we falsely renounce too quickly, it can lead to a lot of difficult and errant and unfortunate behavior and byproduct of false renunciation. That kind of repression can be quite dangerous. So there's the communication area. And then there's something which I call values, which I don't think Vishnambhar used that word, but I'm calling it values, which is distinct from spiritual practices. Because a lot of the times as devotees, we think that if we marry or if we have a partner that is a devotee, well, we must have the same values, right? Because we're bhaktas, but that's actually not true. Like, for example, let's take a very simple value like being on time. Being on time might be part of, let's use an extreme example. Vish, where are your parents from again? El Salvador, right?
El Salvador, yeah. El Salvador.
Right. So if you had a marriage, I'm not saying you're not on time, but El Salvador's not known for being on time, right? So if you married if an El Salvadorian male marries a German female, and the German female would be used to being 5 minutes early for everything, and the El Salvadorian male, yeah, an hour's kind of on time, an hour late, whatever. I'm not making any aspersions on you, Vish, but I'm just making some.
Well, it's a truth. Goravani's Australian Hungarian, which is East. You know.
There you go. Oh wow. Okay. So there you go.
And I'm Latino, so she shows up to the meeting with the principals at school, 10 minutes ahead. I have a separate car for a reason because I'm just going to go in and just, whenever I want to.
Right. Okay. So there you go. So very interesting. So actually, I didn't realize I had no idea that was her heritage. That was her ethnicity. So that's very interesting because it's a very, for me, being on time is a very important value that goes deeper than just being on time. It's not about, oh, I'm a good person, you're a bad person. It's about honoring God's time. It's honoring my time. It's sacred, right? And within not getting overly obsessed by it, 5 minutes late's okay, but after that, get a bit itchy. 10 minutes, okay. After that, very itchy. The point is that's just an example of value. Now you can say, we look at all our acharyas and all our acharyas were super on time, but our spiritual practices don't emphasize that aspect. So it's really important in a marriage partnership to explore those values, where you've got the same values, where you've got different values, and how you can manage those differences in values. Because the last thing you want to do in a marriage is try and change the other person. You somehow have to accommodate both. If you're trying to change the other person all the time, you really shouldn't be getting married, essentially. And there are lots of other things that build values. Like, for example, a value could be how much time you spend with the family in family activities solely is like a value. These are things to be discussed And everything here, goals, communication, values, the more explicit it is, the more it's discussed, the better. Because in a marriage, you might start off in that bliss. You might start off with, oh, nothing could go wrong. But actually, if we make our communication explicit, and we talk about these things, and we're explicit about values, explicit about goals, explicit about when and how we're going to communicate, then as we change over time, because we change over time, it's much more likely the marriage is going to work. And then finally, but by no means least, actually at the top of the pile, spiritual practices. I think what Vishen elucidated on is the more we can partake in spiritual practices together and support each other in our spiritual practices, the better, because that obviously is solidifying and creating, that's bringing the Shakti, that's bringing the Guru Shakti into the marriage. And that, again, that's something to be talked about and something to be explicit about who's responsible for what and what we like doing and who's going to do that with the kids and who's going to do that with the kids, etc. I put in Swarup Sangha Naropa Bhakti, Siddha Bhakti there. I'm not going to go into that, it's too technical. And actually, as I started restudying that, I realized that I'm not sure if those terms are actually helpful for this discussion. So I'm not going to mention those in any detail. So that kind of gives an overview, a kind of a little bit of a marriage model based on what Vishenbhai and Gauravani spoke about last week and experiences I've had. And yeah, that hopefully gives everybody a kind of a taste for what this program, the two parts are all about. And I'd love to hand over to Tarun and the panel to start digging into the questions. Hari Bol, thank you.
Hari Bol, thank you, Yashoda, for that intro and for the beautiful graphic. It's nice to see your graphic design skills slowly evolving.
That was Yoshidari. I didn't do anything. Thank you, Yoshidari. She did it like with 5 minutes notice.
One day maybe in another life.
Gauravani's here. Gauravani's here, guys.
Okay.
Oh, look at it. Vidara, she heard Lolita's voice earlier, so she got inspired.
Haribo! What did I miss?
Oh, let me show you this. This is what I did from the talk last week, okay?
Rajanath Prabhu.
Hang on 1 second.
Thank you.
Gauravani, I don't want to repeat it all, but that's what I got from your talk last week. The importance of both having goals, communication, when and where and how, values which are sometimes distinct from your spiritual practices, and doing spiritual practices together and having Gurudev in the middle. That's what we covered.
That sounds good. Sorry, I apologize for not being here. My school decided to have a half day today, so I had to pick up one kid, and now I have to pick up 2 more kids in half an hour. So,
Well, thank you for coming even for a short time.
yeah.
So we're about to hand over to the panel. So Tarun, take it away.
Hari Bol. So yeah, as I said, thank you, Shoda. So we're now we have around an hour to answer these 2 questions. So I think that gives 5 minutes, up to 5 minutes for each panelist to answer each question around about that time. So hopefully I won't have to cut anyone short this evening, but we'll see, touch wood. The first question, I'm just going to go straight into it. The first question is, if both partners have a sincere desire for a Krishna conscious relationship and Guru Seva, but both are battling so much lust, what is the ideal way to work through this? So I'm going to ask you first, Vidara Prabhu.
Okay. I'm having some light adjustment here. Okay. I'm conscious that I've got a few minutes. It's a massive subject. Luckily, we have a panel, and I think all the panel members are going to bring in different elements. And I thought we'll how could I contribute to this? So I've written down a few notes. I usually don't speak from notes, but tonight I'm going to, because I think it's a little bit important to really get the story right. I'm assuming in what I'm saying, I'm speaking to people who are interested in the subject. So in my mind, that would mean that you're either in a marriage relationship, or you have a partnership of some type, or perhaps you're planning on being in a relationship at some point in the future. So I'm not really speaking about the philosophy from an angle of vision addressed to those who have no interest in the subject of marriage and partnerships, although perhaps some of the ideas might apply in almost any kind of a relationship. So I'd like to just point out that our philosophy, I oftentimes say that the devotees are very aspirational, and that's because we hear from our acharyas what the sadhya is, the goal, and our philosophy begins with the idea of perfection, and so our acharyas talk about perfection because out of necessity we have to know, well, what are we aiming at in terms of what we're doing and how we're living. But we should also know where we're at. And so when we hear stories about, married life and sex only for procreation, perhaps that is very attainable for some persons of a high spiritual qualification. But in general terms, it's probably not a realistic expectation. And I refer you on to, you could ask Srila Das on Facebook, who very kindly posted a conversation between Tamal Krishna Goswami, my god brother, and Srila Prabhupada on the very subject of, well, what do we do when we have a temple like 55th Street, where I used to live in New York City, and we have brahmachari ashram and sannyasi ashram, but we also have householder couples who have their little apartment, a little tiny apartment, a couple of rooms together. What do we do?
But I thought, at least it's there. You can't say I didn't say.
Sorry.
Okay. So, and so the conversation was, how do we reconcile a sacred temple where we have renunciates who are not thinking in these terms, and we have couples who are thinking in these terms. And Tamal Krishna Goswami was, I guess this was very early on in the movement, early-ish anyway, and he was advocating for a kind of a complete abstinence for householders if they were living in a temple like that. And Srila Prabhupada started laughing. And he said, what's the purpose of married life if you're not going to have sex? So along with married life comes the idea that some kind of sexual intimate relationship between man and woman is part of the territory. It's part of the fabric of what it means to be married. So while we have the idea of what is the ideal, we also have to know what is our adhikar. And our adhikar, if the ideal is the goal, what you could call the destination, our adhikar is, well, where we're starting from. So what's the departure point? Where are we on the journey toward this, achieving this perfection of being the ideal householder or being the ideal renunciate or whatever? And so adhikar is a very, very important idea here, I believe. And when we're looking at how do we deal with a couple who, are feeling a lot of, pushing from lust, we have to realize that, the way to understand our adhikar is to look at how much we're affected by the modes of nature. And so some of us will be more affected than others by different modes of nature. And instead of running ourselves down that, oh, I'm not on the highest possible rank of spiritual development, if we kind of, with some compassion, accept where we're at and begin our journey toward that perfection with honesty and humility and acceptance and compassion, both for ourselves and for our partner, we're probably going to do a lot better on the journey. And it's important to realize too that there are different people that have different adhikars, and they're on different levels of advancement, and so we have to make accommodation for that. Being married means entering into an agreement, or if you will, a contract to provide mutual help and support along the way in life. And whatever that support, however that support has to take place, we have plenty of really profound stories of couples in Vedic life making great sacrifices for the other partner.
8 seconds left.
How many?
20 seconds.
Right. Okay. Okay. 20 seconds. Thank you for letting me speak.
No, 1 second, 1 second. Tarun, I'm going to give up my slot here, so give Vidar more time, please.
I'm almost done anyway, but I don't know if I can say it all in 20 seconds.
Take
Okay.
a bit more time and I'll take less, okay?
Okay, I think we need to, when in looking at the subject, we also have to accept that it is a difficult subject to talk about, and there are different people who have different angles of vision according to their adhikar and according to where they're at in their spiritual development, who might not even like us to have this conversation in the first place. So we have to also kind of recognize that and respect everybody where they're at. And I think what I'm saying here is that we have to respect ourselves where we're at. So am I a lusty person and do I need my wife to help me with that? Or am I a little bit more sattvic in my orientation and I can, expect that I can be more self-controlled? In summary, I think what I'm saying is that in this subject matter, we have to try to advance step by step, not run ourselves down, but pray for strength and pray for progress, and have confidence that in undertaking the path of bhakti, no matter where you're at on the journey, with sincere chanting, keeping association of Vaishnavas, and so on, that you will make progress and you'll get to that place of perfection. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate, sorry about.
Don't worry. That's I wasn't, I don't know if you showed me the sign, but I didn't see it. So it's because I was looking at my notes.
Okay. Yeah, I really appreciated what you had to say as well, in respect to adhikar. I thought that was a very important point. I'm going to ask Brajanath Prabhu to speak next. You have 5 minutes, Prabhu, and I'll hold up a sign when you have 1 minute left. So look at my screen.
Thank you for inviting me. Yastada, Nandan Prabhu especially. I just come to listen actually because I don't know how to deal with all these things. Yeah, although I'm married for 35 years, I'm just always learning. If you speak about communication, I'm just like a baby, learning to communicate. But I learned a lot over the last few years, especially about what it is to support each other. Yeah. So in these relationships, I just can tell you in short how I experienced Srila Gurudev dealing with these things, and also what I've heard from Srila Prabhupada and what I witnessed around me over the years. I've always been in the, let's say, in the mainstream of being with devotees. That is my experience, and now I kind of, I don't know if it is stepping out, but I feel more comfortable just not identifying with mainstream. Maybe I feel more that I want to see who I really am and what's happening for me in my life. So that's saying the question is here on the on the bulletin, how to deal with lust. Yeah, if both partners in a relationship have lust, how you deal with that. Yeah. I think we all have lust, because that's the main reason, at least what I observe. My heart is filled with lust because of the absence of pure lust. Yeah, pure lust is not in this world, and conditioned souls, they are overcome by ignorance, which is the real symptom of lust. Yeah, ignorance, we think we can satisfy. And of course, in relationship between husband and wife, there is, I feel there is the greatest opportunity to use that element in supporting each other, in helping each other to grow in bhakti. And in the picture, yeah, it is easy to say we put Sri Guru in the center, but I would say that we need to reach out. Not only that we have to solve this with the two of us, but with well-wishers. Yeah. And Gurudev would always recommend devotees who were getting into a relationship. Maybe some of you can attest that Gurudev will help us to develop spiritually. And all the other things we have to solve ourselves. And I find the greatest way to solve these issues is by reaching out, not to solve the issues of lust, but just to reach out to other devotees and connect with each other in a very beautiful and honest and what I would say in a very just who you are. Yeah, it's very easy. We don't have to hide. It may be that in the mainstream we have to look as if we are perfect. We follow the 4 regulative principles and we chant 16 rounds, whatever it is. But when this question was asked to our beloved Gurudev, then Gurudev said, this was actually about initiation. The devotees from ISKCON, the leaders of ISKCON came to Gurudev and they asked, it seems that you sometimes give initiation very quickly. And we have been told by Srila Prabhupada or our ISKCON GBC that we only give initiation if devotees are giving up certain things, follow certain principles, and promise to chant 16 rounds. Then Gurudev said, but we know that they cannot follow this. Yeah. So he didn't make a real point of it. He said, we all know that anyone who comes in this line is conditioned soul, and they cannot follow. They can promise, yeah. And we can see that artificially we can withhold ourselves from so many things, but it doesn't mean that Bhagavad Gita says, yeah, especially for renounced persons, that hypocrisy very quickly contaminates the heart, yeah, unless we are in a very favorable situation. And that is what Srila Gurudev said, and Srila Prabhupada. The favorable situation is to support each other in bhakti and to reach out to those who are really accepting us for who we are, and with each other communicate and learn to respect each other. And I found that that is very helpful in a small group. Yeah, and I especially thank Budhara Prabhu and Lalita and Vrinda, myself. We have been very fortunate to be on this journey with many devotees, but especially reaching out and connecting with Budhara Prabhu, Lalita, and other Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis has helped me a great deal in dealing with the ignorance which is always pervading my consciousness and which oftentimes is translated into wanting to enjoy the senses. That is what Bhagavad Gita says is lost. Then I just want to close with, I want to just add one success formula for a marriage. Yeah, that works. Yeah. Yasodha, you can add that in your chart, or you can ask Yasodhari to add that in your chart. They often ask Vrinda and myself, what is it that has helped you to be a success couple? And Gurudev oftentimes refer to us that follow Brajanath and Vrinda. So we are together for 35 years, and I feel that we are every day growing in our relationship. So when they ask me what is the success formula, then we answer twice a week we go to the cinema. Yeah. Vrinda goes on Tuesday, I go on Friday. Yeah. So you can put it in your chart. Yeah. I don't know.
That's hilarious.
That is great. That is great.
There's some real truth in that, though. Interdependence. Everyone's got a little bit of their own space, you know.
That's good.
Yeah, you can think about it how you want to.
Raja, it makes me feel like you could say, well, we really have learned to communicate, but just not at the same time.
Yeah, and also give each other space and trust. You know, this is very important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry. Okay, I thought that was really funny.
I don't know how anybody's gonna follow up with that.
What bad news, Vishwambhar Prabhu? I was gonna call on you next. So, yeah, no, thank you, thank you.
By the way, Vrinda's here. She's with me.
Listening.
Oh, Haribo, Vrinda, wow.
Hey, Galavani. I listened to the last week's, so I'm following up. It's really beautiful, your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Prajanath Prabhu. I especially like your point about well-wishers and the importance of trying to take shelter of those who, you know, who want the best for us.
Yeah, who accept us for who we are, you know. We don't need to present. I know I'm not a liberated soul. Yeah, it is very clear for me. But people want to always think, oh, he's an advanced devotee because he's around for 40 years, and you know. But really, I need a lot of help in my progress in bhakti, and especially the support of well-wishers and those who accept me and value me. Yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate you being so open. It's inspiring for all of us. Thank you. I'm going to call on Vishwambhar Prabhu next to answer the question. I'm just going to reiterate the question for you and for anyone who might have come a little later. Question is, if both partners have a sincere desire for a Krishna conscious relationship and Guru Seva, but both are battling so much lust, what is the ideal way to work through this? You have 5 minutes.
Gauravani will start.
I have to leave in a couple minutes, so I don't want to go first, but thank you for repeating the question. I don't know how to take that. I don't know how to answer that in any kind of shastric way or any kind of foundation of bhakti. I'll let my seniors go for that. I just would say, and what I was thinking, listening to the other speakers, is that we have to start at the basic building blocks. So any marriage is a difficult institution. The Grihastha ashram is actually quite a difficult institution. It's not easy in any way for two people from different backgrounds, different sexes, different educations, different families, different, from different parts of the world to come together. So it's a difficult, let's call it transaction or partnership for two human beings to come together in the first place. And then if you put the pressure of bhakti there and lust and all these other things, it might get, let's say, two people might get
Overwhelmed.
it can be overwhelming. So for me, I would say, like, we got to start at the basics, like where you're at. Like, you can have your goal, like, we know, I mean, we're speaking to people that are already, following this path. So we're already on the path of bhakti. And so therefore we do know that Gurudev and Krishna are in the center. But at the same time, even in animal, birds, peacocks have their feathers for attraction, there's a reason, even in the animal world, who has the best coat and who has the loudest squawk gets the partners. So in reality, there is that attraction, if you want to call it lust. Lust comes in so many forms, as we know. For some people, lust may manifest in gambling or having really nice things. I think Vish was going to talk about that a little bit. But for me, I would say that coming together in a marriage pact is difficult. And so I think before we superficially kind of renounce certain things that are innately part of being humans and innately part of being male and female or whatever, having attraction, that we need to acknowledge that that's there. And for most people coming together in marriage, is especially young people, I don't want to say for all cases, but family life is there, that eventually there will be children. And so parents have to be good examples for their kids, and without intimacy, what kind of examples can we make for our children? Part of that is showing affection. Is that lust? How can we prepare them for being loving, affectionate adults without having good examples of how, what they see in front of them in their home? So these are just some of the things I'm thinking of. When Gurudev did marry us, he said that marriage is for service, not just, obviously for spiritual life, but also for each other. Husband should help the wife, husband should help the wife should help the husband. And
even Gurudev sent you away. When I came to India, and then for 4 months, and then you came for 1 month for Parikram, Gurudev told you should go back now with your husband. Remember? And he said like Sita went with Lord Ram to the forest, because Gauravani had the opportunity to stay some extra time. So those are times, and Gurudev was supportive of, stay together. You don't do parikram on your own. Okay. Right? Yeah.
No, I'm just talking about the basic foundations, is that the couples need to have affection. If it's considered lust or not, I mean, then lust is part of, conceiving children. And I would say that conceiving children happens much before the actual conception takes place. I don't know if that makes sense, but conception is just one part of the journey to conception is there too. We can't forget that. So again, if a couple comes together, back to the question, and it's like, what is favorable? If the husband and wife are working well together, then that's favorable. Then they can progress in bhakti. Now, if there's big problems with intimacy and repression, right? If there's superficial renunciation where one partner is superficially rejecting the other one, or vice versa, that's going to affect the marriage, that's going to affect the family unit. So I think we cannot superficially jump to where we would like to be, but where we're not. And we do need to keep our partners in mind. Having, like Budara and Brajanath Prabhu said, also having good mentors and good, people in your life that you can look up to and see and talk to about things that come up. That's really important. And so again, like,
Having friends too.
yeah, friendships, other couples, taking time. I mean, these are really important. I don't know how, I feel like superficially putting a cap on lust, it's an everyday thing, and it manifests more than just with intimacy in sex life, I would say. Some people, like, again, gamble, drink, do other things, and those are also
And she points to me.
lusty. No. So again, I'll end there, but I think building blocks, foundation first, not to superficially renounce. Like, we all know that it didn't work. It doesn't work in the Catholic Church. It doesn't work in our ISKCON. When my father superficially took sannyas when I was 1 year old, that we all know, we don't need to be versed on bhakti and scriptures to know that that probably was a disaster. So,
There
There
you
you
have it. Well, just before Vishwambara Prabhu starts, I just want to let you know, Gauravani, he interrupted you halfway through, so you have official permission to jump in on it. Jump in. Yeah.
Oh, she will.
Yeah.
Oh, she will. She'll jump
I
in.
think she needs permission, Tarun.
I don't think she does.
There's a seal of approval. It's not actually permission, it's actually encouragement. I mean, I'm directly encouraging you.
Yeah. So to continue on Gauravani's, thanks, Tarun. To continue on Gauravani's points here, what I wanted to talk about was just, immediately when somebody hears lust and Gauravani says it, it could mean many different things, like, mind, body, belly, tongue, and actually, and anything you do. Krishna consciousness is like a sports, a business. It's just like it's a process you want to improve in. It's not perfection, it's practice, right? And like sports, they teach my kids over here at swimming club and baseball club that, look, it's not about, winning against the other team. It's about how to improve in milliseconds, how much faster you are. So progress, and Gurudev and the Vaishnavas teach us, it's progress, not perfection, how much more you can improve whatever steps you're taking. So in a marriage, in a partnership, it's battling lust, which may be a variety of things, right? In sports, you also need to battle lust when it comes to being disciplined in overeating, exercise, mindfulness, teamwork, openness and communication with the coach and your teammates. So anything you're engaged in, actually, you should be, there should be a healthy level of sobriety, right? And Krishna consciousness is not necessarily, it's not necessarily it's not a process that, and I think this is where people get mixed up. You're either in perfection and you're in red or orange, red being a cardinal in the Catholic Church, or orange being a sannyasi. And to Gauravani's point, her father at that point in 78 or 79, Tamal Krishna Maharaj is like elbowing him, hey, come to perfection stage and be part of the club. But they're all in practice, right? And actually her father was one of two only householder gurus internationally in the Christian consciousness movement. And he could have just been a householder guru, a perfect, potentially an excellent householder guru, instead of getting bullied and elbowed. And to Yashodanandan's point, this is an evolutionary process for the Christian consciousness movement, where we need to trigger a big change from, instead of perfection, it's practice, like sports. That's when we're winning. Instead of our sannyasi godbrothers elbowing us that perfection is being a brahmachari or sannyasi. No, dude, you're practicing too. We're all practicing here, man. And really, in a relationship, if you're a brahmachari in the ashram, or if you're in a sannyasi in the samiti or whatever it is, or you're practicing acharya, you know, they're all practicing. Or householder ashram, we're practicing. How are we practicing and quote unquote battling lust? If it's the belly, tongue, sex urges or whatever, well, you dovetail some of that, right? I mean, I have a voracious appetite, and Yashoda probably knows this, and Budara does. I have a voracious appetite when it comes to all my senses. Voracious appetite. Okay, I probably could beat everybody here on the panel with my appetite. That being said, right, I make an effort to have a certain level of sobriety in my lifestyle, because my seva, my business, my family life respects it, requires it, right? And that's healthy. That's not Krishna consciousness. That's just healthy lifestyle, for goodness sake, right? Engaging in a healthy lifestyle is part of the footsteps of Krishna consciousness, which we're all in practice. We're all practicing. One of the secrets I hold dear is Guru Seva. And every time I met with Gurudev, with Gauravani or without Gauravani, Gurudev all this time spoke about Guru Seva with whatever projects I was working with him. And whenever he met with Gauravani, thanks Tarun, he spoke about my Guru Seva, and then how her Guru Seva was also with my Guru Seva. In that, having that in the center then gives meaning to the relationship as a householder. And the same thing in my relationships with my business partners and everything, that now I'm engaged in eternal service. With my relationship with my sons and my daughters. Yesterday, we were reflecting on Prabhupada's appearance day. I chastised my son. You don't need to respect Krishna. You don't need to respect Tulsi. You don't need to respect the Holy Dham, but you're sure as hell going to respect my teachers, right? I don't force them to worship anything or anybody, but respect my father and my spiritual teachers. You're sitting down for Prabhupada's Vyas Puja, and you're going to understand our prayer to him. That's understanding my father's name, right? So that brings, then when you're engaged in services, automatically your life becomes more sober. Not perfection, but just practice. Right?
I just want to say one thing about Seva, because Gurudev did emphasize at our marriage ceremony that marriage is for Seva. So then, a person could say, oh, I don't have direct Seva for Gurudev, like this person, like Brajanath Prabhu had direct Seva, or Madhav Maharaj, or Vishwambar has so much Seva. But the Seva is in assisting. It's like, look at our highest aspiration, the Manjaris, how they're serving, right? So if we can serve the servant of the servant, the das of the das of the das, right? And be assistants. So I like to say, okay, I might be taking an assistant role. What do you call a supportive role? And if that helps, not just in my marriage, but with my children, like how am I affecting their seva, that they're able to do, go to the temple? Is that I'm assisting in that. I'm assisting them to be able to participate in Ekadasi. So I'm taking a supportive role, but it's a vital role. We shouldn't put ourselves down that one seva is more critical necessarily than another. Every day is a conscious effort. Vishwambar wakes up, he might run on the treadmill, but he's listening to Prabhupada's lecture, Gurudev's lecture. When he goes for business, every time I'm with you on a business dinner, there's never a time that he doesn't speak about Gurudev, never, always. My spiritual father, or something, he's always taking the opportunity. So in that way, seva is little microscopic opportunities every day, every moment. It might not be, did I send, $10,000 for the project? That might be one way, but it's also reading Bhagavatam at night for 5 minutes before the kids go to bed, helping them to understand why we do something. What is Srila Prabhupada, Srila Gurudev's Pranam mantra, that's all Seva. So I just wanted to say that that's part of that center, Yashoda, that you put in the middle.
Yeah.
And then one last thing, because I do have to go and I'll
Well,
probably
we have to
step
wrap
back
up
in.
anyways.
But and because it's about couples, that we're on a parallel journey, we're not the same people, but we have these like kind of ladder rungs together. And by checking in with each other all along the way. So if you get married at 20, you know, Brajanath Prabhu, you may not be the same person you are when you first married Vrinda, but yet together there was some almost like, what do you say when you put your, you know, like
Milestones.
docking your, you know,
Oh.
docking yourself together at different places and aligning yourself. And that sometimes takes a little bit of, you know, adjustment and definitely communication, but then centering, you know, like when you're bringing something into focus, like a camera, you kind of have to center it into focus. And that's exactly how couples have to be, whether they're have nothing to do with Krishna consciousness or bhakti, whether they're just, you know, or whether they're devotees, they kind of have to come together along the way to check in with each other, you know?
Yeah. Anyways, in closing, Bhakti Seva microdosing, which is a little bit of bhakti, will then overpower any lust. Prabhupada says you don't surrender lust, it's engagement of devotional service.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you for that really beautiful summary at the end. It's really nice.
Vish, can you just repeat that last sentence?
Yeah.
It's just bhakti microdosing.
No, after that.
Oh, engagement in devotional service overpowers lust, not surrendering lust.
Yeah.
Oh, I think just telling, because it's in reference to, I mean, many times Prabhupada said these things, but it's in particular reference to a letter to Hayagriva, who some of you may know, he's like one of the first 4 or 3 disciples of Prabhupada. He came with Kirtananda Maharaj, and he had a voracious appetite in terms of lust. And Prabhupada arranged for his marriage with, I think, 1 person, and then a second person later on he got married. So there are some issues there. But Prabhupada gave him the recipe. Look, you don't conquer lust through, you know, just getting married, actually. And Prabhupada said, engage in deity worship, which is really engage in devotional service. Continue your writing, expand your devotional service.
Attraction, not negation.
Exactly. Perfect. Well said. Yeah.
Gurudev did say at our marriage, and he said it a few times, marriage is for seva.
Yeah.
Great.
Very well. Yeah, I also like this point that you made before, Vishwambara, which was that we have to sacrifice our lust, you know, in sports or other material endeavors. And I think it reframes how we look at regulations in Bhakti, because I think we might have sometimes we take this more, we have this view that maybe they're arcane, maybe they're traditional, but when we see that we have to make these kinds of sacrifices in any endeavor, if we want to be successful in any endeavor, and you look at anyone who's very successful in their field, I know Yashodananda Prabhu very much idolizes Cristiano Ronaldo, and he's very happy that he's returned to his club, Manchester United. In case you can't hear that Mancunian accent in Yashoda's voice, he's a big Man U fan. Nothing to do with glory hunting or anything like that. But you see, even Cristiano Ronaldo is, you know, he makes a lot of personal sacrifices to be so good at football. And I watched him talking about how he encourages his 10-year-old kids to take ice baths after they exercise and stuff like that. And he tells them, it's your choice, but if you want to be as successful as me, you're going to have to make these sacrifices. So when we think about it in that context, then it starts to make more sense, as opposed to thinking, oh, it's just like the kind of Judeo-Christian faith that we've grown up around. So thank you for that example. I'm going to move on to Charu Chandrika Didi. I'm going to repeat the question again. If both partners have a sincere desire for a Krishna conscious relationship and Guru Seva, but both are battling so much lust, what is the ideal way to work through this? You have 5 minutes and I'll hold up a sign when you have 1 minute left.
Hi, Paul. I'm outdoors. So, sorry. Dhanyavad pranam. It's so nice to hear everyone speak, and everyone's spoken so beautifully and very, very well. Covered a lot of points, but I don't know if I can really add anything, but reflect on some of the points. Basically, that I was thinking, where Srila Rupa Goswami Pad, he said to accept what's favorable for bhakti, to reject what's unfavorable for bhakti, and it's there in Ki Upadeshamrita, as this, I think Vishwan Prabhu mentioned, Vachya Vega, Manusha, Koda Vega, and Jiva Vega, Pasta Vega, and first verse, second verse, Atyahara, Priyashisha, Prajopo, Niyamagraha, and Nishtyat, Tat Karma Pravartana. These first 3 verses, even the 4th verse of Upadeshamrita, explaining, how we can accept, and actually these instructions, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, are for Grihastas. Those instructions are especially for Grihastas. So the point is, as has been mentioned, that it's not so easy to just simply give up lust. But Vishwan Prabhu made the point that I was going to make myself, that actually, if we simply accept what is favorable for our bhakti, what is most favorable for our bhakti is sadhu sangha, sarvasastakoi, lavamatra sadhu siddhi hoy. So, even that one moment's association with a pure deity, what that can give, it can give all perfections. Of course, may have had many moments in association with pure devotee, how we're associating also. So if we have the goal in mind, always, like Yashodananda Prabhu mentioned in the beginning, then we know what we're wanting to aspire for. And of course, if we're really sincere, then we will want to aspire to dedicate our whole mind, body, and senses to service. Vishwan Prabhu mentioned that actually Guru Seva should be the center, and by this high class sadhu seva, then we will get that Shakti, that potency to be able to overcome our lust, which is what hopefully we would want to do on this. So, yeah, I think the more we are in high class association, the more we're serving, then definitely all the lower things will go away automatically and naturally. So again, that all depends on Sukriti, Samskar, Pudara Prabhu said at the beginning, Adhikar. If we have a lot of Sukriti, we have a lot of good Samskars, then it's easier. If we don't, at least we can place ourselves, as much as possible in high class association, and then that will definitely give us a lot of what's the word, protection, and like I said before, Shakti, the empowerment that we can easily control our senses. And Vishwa, or was it Gauravani, did he mention the point that it's discipline is a good thing, actually, because in any sport or anything you need discipline. So what to speak of on a spiritual path? If you indulge in anything, it's going to have bad results. It's not going to be fun in any way. So Srila Prabhupada said he recommended for Grihasta, just if you're gonna have intimate association, do it like that, do it once a month, you know. And he said for procreation, but even if you can't, you know, it's not for procreation, but still once a month, I think is quite a good, you know, thing that if you really can't control, okay, just once a month, there's some discipline there. So I don't know if I've said anything, you know, in any way to help. But I'm very tired actually at the moment. I've been traveling all day. So yeah, I think that's about all I can say right now. I'm too tired to continue really, but I think everyone said everything already. So I'm just reflecting on different points that have been made. Okay.
Very cool.
All right.
It's nice that you did that, actually, that you reflected on these multiple different points. And I also like how you're calling from outside. It gives a kind of feel to the
I don't know if you
Zoom.
can see me. It like I'm just sitting on this bench here. Yeah, there's not much light, but anyway.
Yeah,
Okay.
it seems like you're like at any moment now someone's gonna call you. You're gonna go on some kind of like special ops, like nighttime mission, and we're gonna just see you in the background like running off with like a Kalashnikov. Like, sorry, getting a bit carried away.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. You can let me know, you can message me, because we're gonna have one more question, and if it's too much, I won't call on you. Just send me a message. So just before we go to that question, we have one more person on the panel who I'm delighted to welcome back, who also gave me a lift home last night from our Srila Prabhupada festival and expounded many wise words in that drive home. And I'm sure is going to add more to this question. I'm just going to repeat the question for you one more time, Yashashwini Didi. If both partners have a sincere desire for a Krishna conscious relationship and Guru Seva, but both are battling so much lust, what is the ideal way to work through this? You have 5 minutes, and I'll hold up a sign when your time is coming to an end.
Okay, thank you. Haribol, Dandavats to everyone. This question and this topic has caused so many problems over the years and so much difficulty and so much guilt in people's hearts. And as far as I understand, now it's being dealt with in some areas in Srila Prabhupada's movement in a different way, that before people get married, they actually interview the girl and the boy separately and then together. And they ask them so many questions. They ask them, how many principles do you honestly think you can follow? And then they ask them, how quickly do you want to move forward with that path? And do you want shared or separate bank accounts? How many children do you want to have? So these are all the things that people argue over and become big topics. So they're starting to try and match people better in this way. And I think it's really important, because if we've actually discussed those things and you're matched with someone who's a similar nature, which is what they always did Vedically with astrology and things, then it's much easier to go forward in that way. And I think if we feel guilty about everything, then actually it closes the heart, and then our bhakti suffers. So Krishna actually is in our heart. There's one very famous verse, I just ran and found the book now, in the 11th canto, where Krishna explains actually about this topic. And he says that I'm in the heart of everyone. And if the devotee, he wishes he could not do those things, whatever it is, whatever area of lust it may be, wishes he could not do those things, but he can't stop himself. But he says, if he has faith in me and he hears about me, he said he should remain patient and happy in my service, and he should not worry about it. And he says if he becomes too attached to knowledge or renunciation, instead of doing my service, this will actually close his heart. It will harden his heart, and he will have lost the thread of what Pure Bhakti stands for. So this is actually really important. And yeah, also Krishna is in our heart, because sometimes it's very easy in institutions and big devotee assemblies that it's very easy for people to judge and for us to feel uncomfortable. So Krishna is in our heart, and Krishna actually knows what's going on in our heart. He knows how much we may be trying. So somebody may not be able to follow, but they might be really trying hard to serve and to please other devotees and have nice relationships. And someone might be able to follow everything, but they might actually not be trying so hard in their bhakti because it's just easy for them. So Krishna actually in the heart, he's seeing our endeavor and he's reciprocating with that. You know, so I think it's really important just to keep it so simple that we're dealing with people. Our guru's a person, Krishna's a person, and they're real people, and they're actually seeing our endeavor. So I think that is a really important thing. And also somewhere in the 11th canto, I can't quote because I can't remember, but it actually talks about what is impious and what is pious. And it's saying how it's very hard to judge piety and impiety, because what's pious for one and impious might not be for another. So if somebody's like, say, on heroin, if he starts to maybe take, I don't know what they take next down the line, but whatever they take next down the line that's better, that for him is pious. So it may not be following anything really, but that is pious because he's going forward on his path. And if someone has been like in a more elevated stage and then he slips, that for him is impious. So I think it's really, really important that amongst devotees, we try not to judge. We try to see people's hearts. We try to see people's efforts, you know, and we can really, really appreciate actually devotees in general. So I think also it's a really important point that everybody's been making, that we can't actually develop our bhakti just by trying to renounce everything. Okay, 1 minute. Yeah, we can't develop our bhakti by renouncing everything, but we can only by increasing that higher taste. And that, like I think Gauravani made this point maybe, it's really important. Our children are actually the next generation that's going to pass Krishna consciousness on. And if we don't give time to them and we don't actually let them see a loving family, that they can grow up seeing the Krishna consciousness means love, it means joy, it means sweetness, then actually Krishna consciousness is not going to continue, because that's the next generation. So this is really actually really, really important service. And I think it's important. Also the mission is important, but we all have different natures. And if we follow our nature and just give our best, and if we could all learn to respect and love and appreciate each other for who we are and allow that, and I think actually Krishna consciousness gradually, I think it's coming towards that, and I think harmony is going to come much more in the future. So that's all I have to say. I'm in my time. Haribol.
Well, thank you so much, Shashwini Didi. I really liked how you started off by talking about how it was in the past, and you ended expressing hope and positive expectation for how it will be in the future. I really appreciated that. Okay, so we're going to move quickly for the next question because we don't have so much time, but I think this question is very important. I'm going to drop down the time to 3 minutes, and I'm going to ask all the panelists to try and keep to 3 minutes unless they want to go to bed really late. So the question was, how do you use bhakti to resolve disagreements? But we're going to narrow the scope slightly because we have covered conflict in a previous session. We're going to ask the question, how do you use bhakti to resolve disagreements in relationships. And I'm gonna go for the same order. So Vidara Prabhu, you are first.
Okay, 3 minutes, counting now. What came to my mind when I looked at the question was that the peace formula, there's so many ways to answer this question, 1,000 using the philosophy, but one peace formula we find in Upadeshamrita, Rupa Goswami's Dadati Pratigranati Guyam Efati Prachati Punkte Bojayate Chaiva Sadbrinim Pratilakshanam. So, what comes to my mind is that by being generous in our relationships and being able to also receive with gratitude from each other, that's a really great way to build a bridge when there's some misunderstanding. And then maybe the most important thing, and I think I've learned a lot about this from Anuragini in Germany, and Brajanath Prabhu and Brinda, is careful listening. So Guya Mehati Prichiti, meaning hearing, sharing what's on your mind and hearing very carefully with compassionate listening what's on the mind of the other person. So I think that's almost, you can almost say that's the answer. And then lastly, breaking bread, giving prasadam and taking prasadam with another devotee is a very good way to build bridges. It's really hard to eat if you're feeling unhappy in a relationship. Nobody wants to sit down and eat with somebody that they're having a hard time with. And so if you can overcome all of it and get to a place of taking prasad together, that's another way to build a bridge. Right? Just a few thoughts. There's a lot more that could be said, but I think I'm gonna leave it for there. Thanks.
Well, you left an extra minute, so I'm going
Yeah,
to
because I took another minute before, so it's all
remember
even now.
I'm gonna remember it for next week, so you get an extra minute next week. Yeah, thank you. I like those practical suggestions, especially the prasadam one. Partly because I love prasadam, but also I thought it was quite sort of out the box suggestion, but made a lot of practical sense when you actually think about it. I'm going to go to Yashodananda Prabhu next because he has to go very shortly. And if any of the other panelists have to go shortly and want to be bumped up the list, please send me a message. Haribol Yashoda, you have 3 minutes.
That's just before I start, I just wanted to extend a warm welcome to Sadbhuj, who I haven't seen for a long time. Beautiful to see you, Prabhu. Really nice. Glad you joined us. Haribol.
Oh.
Okay, so 3 minutes. I'm just starting my clock now. So, okay, so I want to go to the etymology of the word sambandha. So sambandha, bandha means to bind two personalities together, connected by prem. This means us to Guru, or Guru to Rupa Goswami, or us to Krishna, us to Radha. And san means to perfection. So we're trying to develop such a unity of heart that we're almost one while simultaneously being separate, okay? So it's like being of one heart. Essentially, so Gurudev is of one heart with Rupa Goswami. We want to be of one heart with Gurudev. We're not actually, to quote Kahil Gibran in The Prophet, who's a wonderful poet, it's not that we're actually looking into each other's eyes, we're looking at the same thing. So each marriage partner, the husband and the wife want to be of one heart with Guru, okay? Which actually the byproduct of that is we'll be of one heart with each other in a sense, but ideally with Guru. So what I would say is, in this respect, is that every time that we have a disagreement, we don't look at the disagreement as an issue of, as a problem. We look at the disagreement as a great opportunity. If we listen hard enough, if we hear hard enough, and we have faith in Guru and faith in our own vows to our Guru, then we can use every single disagreement that we have between each other in order to invest in 3 things in our marriage. one, we can invest in the values of our marriage. Like, okay, so we're having a disagreement. Does this mean I've kind of got the value system here wrong? Do we need to realign here? That's the values. Or the structure. Is it a question of we're not making enough time for this? So we invest in the structure. Or at the heart of it is the spiritual life is, oh, do I need to be chanting more deeply? Do I need to be understanding Tate Nukampam more deeply? Do I need to be going deeper in my bhakti in order to exhibit proper tolerance and forgiveness for one another? So let's look at every single disagreement as an opportunity for transformation and for nurturing one another. Hare Krishna.
Something spiritual.
Wil je van mijn
Je bent aan de beurt.
een snoertje halen?
Very well. Thank you, Yashoda. I liked how you kind of changed the angle, looking at disagreement as and conflict as a potential opportunity. I appreciated that angle. Thank you, Prabhu. Okay, Brajanath, Prabhu, you are up next. I'm just going to reiterate the question. It is, how do you use Bhakti, or how can we use Bhakti to resolve disagreements in relationships? You have 3 minutes.
I always remember the most important impression that I keep with me, and that is Srila Gurudev. He really was very I'm just looking for the right word, Linda. But I'm battling with that every day, yeah. But if we want to be there for others, Gurudev said, then first become Krishna conscious. And even though we are married and we have relationships, my advice, and that is simply my personal advice, is we have to fly our own plane. Yeah. And we should not, at least I feel like that, allow anyone to feel rejected or disrespected. But it is a very hard journey because we will be tested again and again in our journey. The material energy is not going to stop until we are completely convinced I want only to be Krishna conscious. And that in and of itself is an amazing journey. And then, as Yashoda Prabhu said, anything that is an obstacle turns into an opportunity. And that is why I can only recommend from my personal experience, disagreements, they turn into beautiful, and that is really the joy of life, because we will find so many adversities in our life. And Srila Bhakti Rakshita Maharaj is sharing with us, religion means constant adjustment. Yeah. And what is the most beautiful approach towards religion is to fall in love with God. Yeah. So everything has been given by Sri Guru, and Sri Guru is not absent. He is always present. They are not mortal beings, they are eternal beings. So my advice from personal experience is take enough time to check in with your Gurudev. Take enough time to check in with your Harinam. Take enough time to make friendship with those who are really able to give support on the way. Yeah. And understand that there is a reason why disagreements, problems, conflicts, obstacles come in our life. It is because we have not yet changed the quality of, at least that's what I experience, of my heart. Yeah. If my heart is improving, then everything becomes auspicious. Yeah, no disagreement. Yeah. It may be that the other persons or in the relationship also, they have to also fly and learn to fly their own journey, their own plane. Yeah, it's although however nice it is to be with each other, we are here to support each other to develop Krishna consciousness. And I have my personal responsibility in that. And that is how I reconcile. Yeah, challenges are coming, disagreements are there, and they do not stop entering my life. But whatever mercy is available, that mercy has brought me where I am now, and that mercy will continue to help me to progress on my journey. And as much as I become a happy, healthy, Krishna conscious person, that much others can benefit from my association. That's how I approach disagreements in relationships. Yeah, especially with Vrinda, and it is it's a beautiful opportunity, I find. And I wish I could hear from Sadhbhuj. I would love to hear Sadhbhuj Prabhu, because he is a very beautiful, amazing, yeah, spiritual devotees. Yeah. Thank you for.
Thank you so much, Prajanath Prabhu. I really appreciated your analogy of the plane, and actually as you were discussing the analogy of the plane, I had this really low flying plane. I had to mute my audio because it was really, really loud, so it felt like it iterated the point, like the sneezing thing that we had like a few months ago. But yeah, fly your own plane. Thank you very much, Prajanath Prabhu. We're gonna go on to, I think, Gauravani Didi, if she doesn't have to run off.
No, oh, she did, and then she came back.
I already ran off. School's closed. Haribol Sadhbhuj. When I saw him on there, I said, why is Madhavi and Sadhbhuj Prabhu not helming this talk? They would be ideal. The only thing I could think of is in relation to bhakti and relationships is that we cannot control anybody else, that we can only control ourselves.
Yeah.
And so all we can do is work on how we react. I mentioned, I think on the last time, that Gurudev told us multiple times to be like Sita and Ram, specifically to me. So, try to control the words that are coming out and keep them sweet and kind. And again, it's not about the other person, it's about how you react. So we all know that Krishna is controlled by love and affection. So in any relationship, love and affection and how one speaks, greatly affects the other person. And once it's out, it's out. So our words and how our tone is really important. And then from a relationship perspective in a marriage is trying not to have those same arguments more than once. Sometimes in a relationship, you just try to learn from that particular, scenario, and then communicate it out and then not have it again. And then, in due course, there's less and less of those, opportunities to quarrel. So, and Gurudev told us so much, don't quarrel, don't criticize, and so, just try to always reflect on that from just like a practical place, because usually that doesn't help. It just adds fuel to the fire. So I'll just end there and Vish can carry on.
Yeah. All right. Oh, good. Gauravani uses a good term, quarrel. So when it comes to disagreements in relationships and how we use bhakti to resolve it, I think all of us have had over here, Yashoda, Pudara, and Brajanath Prabhu. We've all had the privilege to be with Gurudev when there was a lot of disagreements. And we got to see how Gurudev reacted as an example when there were disagreements. And those disagreements usually arise, and in any relationship, the same thing. It arises with money, time, priorities, budgeting. So, or different devotees. So that's my daughter. So Gurudev, we got to see Gurudev. I got to see Gurudev when it came to, if it was the LA Temple or Navadvip project, how there was disagreements between his disciples and how he may have had preferences that Brajanath Prabhu had insight on, but then Gurudev surrendered to the will of where the quarrel was or disagreements were going. And I witnessed Gurudev afterwards in Houston. Once there was a dispute over some assets in LA, and I witnessed how between sannyasis and householders and donors, and Gurudev had a preference on the outcome. He liked the temple over there, so an asset project for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. And at the end, the disagreements were so high that Gurudev then asked everybody, okay, you know what? What happens is you got disagreements, then you get quarrel, which is pretty much low class quarrel. And you don't, a relationship and a partnership in marriage, if you're quarreling, maybe you need a little bit of a break, get a breather, right? So Gurudev asked everybody, okay, you know, take a break. Everybody just needs to take a break here. And privately then, it was, I think Madam Raj was turning on the bath and Gurudev was getting ready for private kind of massage and everything. And he told me in privacy, Madam Raj, and I think Brajanath was getting some towels ready for the massage. He told me in privacy, Gurudev said, see, you should be more, when it comes to these disputes and disagreements, bhakti comes if you're soft. Gurudev had the power to basically legislate what he wanted. And Prabhupada was with us for a shorter time and period, and Prabhupada just legislated what he wanted. Gurudev, though, was giving us, not different from Prabhupada, but was giving us deep, was showing us through example how to relate with each other. And so Gurudev conceded and allowed in that time for the quarrel to happen. And if it was an Navadvip project or anything, and he had, even though he had a preference, he didn't legislate that preference. That was his relationship with his disciples. Even though he was the master, he didn't legislate it. And so similarly, he instructed me when it came to my relationships and sevas and projects or my marriage, don't just be more soft. Don't be so hard. Bhakti is Radharani, is soft like a flower. And it appears wherever there's softness. So.
Haribol, I really like that point, that bhakti is soft. So yeah, as Karuna Mai Didi is saying, beautiful. Yeah, it's a really beautiful point of it. I've been thinking about this conflict that's not even directly involving me, and I'm of a friend and someone else, and how to approach that friend and explain another angle of vision. And I think that really helps. Bhakti is soft. Thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that. So I think we only have Charu Chandrika Didi left, if she's still here, and Yashashwini Didi. So Charu, if you're still here, you have 3 minutes. Yes, you are still here.
Hi, Bob. Sorry. Yeah. What was the question again? Sorry. I'm kind of still on the move, but go on.
I was just thinking that I should repeat it. How do you use bhakti to resolve disagreements in relationships? 3 minutes. And I will hold up a sign when you have 1 minute left, and then when you have to finish.
I think I didn't hear everyone's answer to this because, like I said, I'm still kind of moving. I did hear what Yashodhananda Prabhu said though, and I was thinking along those same lines that I think that disagreement isn't a really bad thing. And I think that even if we have a disagreement, you can't expect that everyone's going to agree on everything all the time. In any relationship, whether it be marriage or whether it be, serving together as brahmacharis or brahmacharinis, vanapras, sannyasis, it doesn't matter. But like Yashodhananda Prabhu said, that even if one does have a disagreement, we can always focus on, what does Gurudev want? What does Gurudev want from us? What does Gurudev want in general? So I think, always bringing it back to Gurudev being in the center or Krishna being in the center, and kind of aligning with that. And I think if we align with that, then that disagreement can become something very positive. So I don't know. Okay, I can leave it there.
Haribol, thank you.
Haribol. Haribol.
I liked again how you sort of changed the angle that disagreement can be a positive thing. I appreciated that. It seems to be a recurring theme. Okay, last but not least, have your Shashwini Didi. I'm going to repeat the question one more time. It is, how do you use Bhakti to resolve disagreements in relationships? You have 3 minutes. Yashashwini, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I think solving disagreements and is the same whether you're in Bhakti or out of Bhakti. But the difference Bhakti makes is that we have a different vision and a different goal, different path, because we're understanding that we're eternal souls and we're trying to take that proper identification on. So our gurus have actually given us the whole process of Bhakti, right from the bottom rung of the ladder, right to the top of the ladder.
Oh, you just went on mute again. All right, ball. Yashashwini, Haribol. Sorry, we're having some technical difficulties. Yashashwini, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Do you wanna just
going off for some reason? Okay, so yeah, what was I saying yet? So I think the important thing is, like Badara Prabhu was saying, is communication. And when we communicate, it's really important to hear and to give each other time to hear without any interruption and with no judgment. And I think the important thing when we're hearing and trying to communicate, the important thing is we're not trying to prove by that communication that one is right and the other is wrong. That is not what we're trying to do at all. We're trying to hear the other person so that we understand their feelings. And in a non-judgmental way, we're trying to understand each other's inner feelings so that we can get a win-win situation. So both parties can feel validated, both parties can do whatever compromises are needed, that they can both feel equally satisfied and deal with the problem. So I think that's really important. And I think it's also important that if we have a disagreement, if people are really, sometimes we get really hot under the collar, then I think it's important to calm down before that discussion happens, because otherwise things get said and in a way that actually makes it worse. So that's all I've got to say, really. Okay.
Oh, thank you so much, Yashashini. I think that's all we have time for. Yeah, we've gone considerably over, but thank you very much, everyone, for coming, for attending, for participating.
Tarun, is there a way we could have Sabuj and
Madhavi.
Madhavi?
Well, that would be nice.
Orvani and I would like to hear from them.
Definitely.
Yeah, by popular request. I mean, obviously it's kind of springing it on them, but if you
They got the questions.
Madhavi's the expert.
if you guys feel comfortable, we'd love to hear from you. I do want to say, if anyone has to go, this is being recorded, so you will be able to hear their answers afterwards. But if you'd like to stay, yes, please. You guys can have 3 minutes each, I guess. Harry Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Hi, Bo. So from my perspective, I literally just walked in the room. I don't know what's going on, so it'd be a bit awkward for me, to be honest. It's nice to see everyone though, but maybe if somebody prompts me, I don't know what we're even talking about.
Sure. The question is, so yeah, I'll just ask the question, and you can do what you want with it. How do you use Bhakti to resolve disagreements in relationships?
How do I use Bhakti to resolve? I don't know. It's an interesting question. I suppose it's at the root. It's one of the basis of why we're together and our relationship. So I would imagine that's the way we use it, to bring it back to what we're all about, versus whatever, typically when we're having disagreements, it's about, any number of little things that, people irritate each other after being together for a long time, right? So it's usually little things like that. But bringing it back to Bhakti, that's what we're really about, and trying to uplift ourselves and each other and our family and our children and our communities in Bhakti. And I don't know if that's a sufficient answer.
No, it's definitely a sufficient answer. Thank you.
I guess as a grounding tool, that's how we use Bhakti, as something to bring us back to the foundation of why we're together, and what our relationship is about. So yeah. Recently, we've been doing more chanting together and reading together. Those things are good and very inspiring. It's nice to not just, go off in a corner and do it alone, but actually sit together and do that. It's inspiring and uplifting. So that's another way, I guess.
I believe it was Yashashwini Didi that was talking about how the importance of remaining calm, especially in the heat of, a contentious discussion, an argument per se. That a lot of times, because of our perception of what's being said, we're not actually listening to what's really being said. And, that's when things can start going more into the emotional realm rather than, being processed clearly in terms of like what's actually being communicated or requested. And I think they're just, really just not having any time to really think about the subject an awful lot and hearing the devotees talking. So I appreciate everybody's patience with me coming in late on this discussion, but I would say that a lot of times it's really not what's actually being said that is the issue. It's just what we perceive as being said, and how we think it's somehow related to us, when in a lot of times it's actually really nothing to do with our behavior. And we become triggered by what we perceive other people to be saying, not what they're actually saying. And sometimes what they're actually saying is not personal. And, you know, yeah, there's projection of a person's mentality, but also at the same time, you know, maybe somebody, you know, might be, you know, if you have a close relationship with somebody and they're, you know, pointing out a flaw or something that you could possibly do better in a certain circumstance, a lot of times it's hard to hear that sort of thing. Or I'll speak for myself, you know, for me, it's hard to hear that kind of stuff. And a lot of times you just have to kind of step back, detach a little bit from the situation, and then re-engage with the conversation on the level that it's actually being communicated, rather than just going by our own perception and emotional feeling about what we think is being said. And even if someone is saying something that's pinching, a lot of times that if you really can just like step back in that moment, I'm talking about like nanoseconds of cognition, but you can just step back and detach a little bit and really try to, you know, just glean the essence and the, you know, what's actually being communicated in terms of like love and affection from that other person. I think that a lot of times, especially with devotees, that we have a tendency to want to fix each other, which I believe was being spoken about from what I've heard of the talk. And if you don't have the necessary relationship or close relationship with the person that you're trying to fix, then I think a lot of times you can get exactly the opposite result of what you intended in the first place. So I think for me, you know, communication is really, really important. And, you know, as was mentioned before, that, you know, there's tone, there's, you know, relationship, there's eye contact, there are so many different ways that you can communicate what you need to communicate in a more effective way than just throwing stuff out per se. And just, you know, there was a lot of, I remember when I first became a devotee, there was a lot of talk of like, the truth should just be spoken because it's the truth. It doesn't matter how you say it. Because it's the truth, you just say it. And, you know, a lot of devotees left the temple because that truth was being spoken to them. And did they disagree with the truth? No, they just disagreed with how it was communicated. So that's all I got to contribute this time, but I'd like to thank all of you devotees for putting this together. It's much needed. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you both of you for just on the spot, on the fly, just contributing. I think you both made really nice points about using Bhakti as a grounding tool, like recentering what our priorities are, right? And also perception, because yeah, I guess we're seeing everything from our angle of vision. And when you realize, like you said, it's not about you. Like there's you know, we don't have perfect perception, we have finite perception. So yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that for coming in and sharing at the end. So yeah, it's now that time where we unfortunately do have to finish. I just want to briefly thank everyone. I want to thank Sadhbhuj Prabhu and Madhavi Didi for just spontaneously jumping in and sharing their hearts. I want to thank all of the panelists for coming and making this possible. Especially want to thank Vishwambar Prabhu and Gauravani Didi for taking their time again over these last two sessions. I want to say that devotees like have been coming to me and saying, I feel really inspired seeing their relationship and how they handle everything in such a practical and sweet and holistic manner. So yeah, I want to say thank you for coming and being so candid and vulnerable. I think it definitely has helped, you know, young devotees, you know, around my age, slightly older, who are kind of, you know, especially some of them are quite new to Krishna consciousness, and they're in relationships and they're adapting. So yeah, I think some of the things that you have said have been really helpful. I want to thank Yashodananda Prabhu, though he's not here, who has made holistic bhakti possible and who keeps making it possible with his enthusiasm and his drive. I want to thank our creative side. It was Krishna Prabhu from, I think, North Carolina, and maybe Madhav Prabhu, who made this week's poster with all the beautiful beautiful quotations from last session. And last but not least, I want to thank all of the attendees for coming and making this possible as well. Vansha Kalpa Turiyascha Kripa Sindhuva Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Okay, I'm gonna end the live stream now, and if anyone wants to add anything, they're welcome to. Hari Bol.